Well, back to you, Janine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this next section of the meeting is, I'll just use the one, around the key decisions that I laid out for you. So one of them you'll be very familiar with. Get that one.
But it's about a train.
Maybe.
Yes.
Look, we've got it here. Phil's here to talk to it. We may not need to spend too much time on this given the conversations that you've had, but I guess just to understand this within the context of the annual plan.
Yeah, thanks, Janine and Phil. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is 100% over what the different options look like and mean for us going forward. So in your hands, thank you.
Yeah, so morning, councillors. As we have discussed, the options in front of us are to continue conversations about the continuation of the service, either on a permanent basis.
The SOP can be otherwise called an assignment instruction. It could be a one-pager, which,
as set out in the annual plan and the long-term plan, or to see an extension of the trial through to the middle of 2027. The options for agency funding for the service, both subject to their approval, are at the current financial assistance rate of 60%, which is the way the trial is being funded currently, or at the normal financial assistance rate at a reduced number of 51%, which could either be for the trial extension or permanent service. The proposed annual plan, as you know, assumes continuation of the service at 51%. And the difference between those two numbers is 668,000. We could go to the next slide. So the decisions of council determine the approach that's required. Janine has noted here that there are currently no other consultation matters identified in the annual plan. So the table here provides you with a sense of what the consultation requirements would be for each of the scenarios. Commencing a permanent service from the 1st of July 26 at that lower far rate would require annual plan consultation. Extending the trial for 1 year at the higher rate would require no consultation. Extending the trial for 1 year at the lower rate would require consultation, and ceasing the service from the middle of 2026 would require consultation, both as part of the annual plan, but also because it is a significant change to level of service, effectively would require an LTP amendment, which is an additional level of consideration. The process is broadly the same in terms of the consultation piece, but the change is to the long-term plan rather than just to the annual plan.
With a requirement for an external audit review of that amendment as well. So there's an additional cost component in there.
Okay, maybe to the next. We'll just continue this for now and then open for questions. So the rating impacts of those decisions are shown on the screen, and the difference of 668 is shown in the third row. We'll keep going. As you know, the agenda was released, and at your meeting on Thursday, you have a paper to consider sending of a letter to the NZTA board seeking their indicative or stating potentially your indicative support for an extension of the trial, but for 12 months at 60%, subject to their approval at a board meeting in February. If you were to make that decision on Thursday, we propose to see whether there is the ability for us to move your annual plan budget meeting, which is currently timetabled for early February, to after that meeting on the 19th of February, so that you'll be in possession of their decision at that point, which will allow you to think about it in the context of the annual plan, rather than us having this sort of two-scenario conversation occurring at that time.
So that would certainly make sense to me, Phil, that then we have that knowledge 100% confirmed. Yep.
That's it. Happy to answer any questions you might have. And we have James online as well, if you had any questions for him.
We do have a couple by the look of it, Noel.
Can I just make my position clear in case I'm incoherent on Thursday? I support the letter that's coming up on at 60%, but if it's not at 60%, I can't support the continuation. So I just put my sixpence in ahead of that meeting, but I think it's self-explanatory what you've done here. And yeah, it's reality is I go back to the very the exception of this, and how then Deputy Mayor at Waikato, Dines Fulton, and I had a very long chat about this, and I supported it, Te Huia, at the time, so long as it did not cost the ratepayers any more money. And that's the position I still take at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks for the clarity, Noel. Jen?
Thank you. Are there any other topics that would likely require annual plan consultation? I'm asking that. Yeah. If you could.
Certainly not seeing anything at the moment. The staff proposal is very much in line with year 3 of the LTP. But obviously today is an opportunity to see whether there are other matters or other views from elected members that may require a consultation engagement through the process. But nothing's coming forward in terms of what staff have put in front of you.
Because to clarify, my understanding is when you do a consultation for annual plan, it's generally in the 50 to 100 grand cost to do that consultation compared to just carrying on. And you said the audit fees, should there be anything substantial come from, what are they in the range of? I just don't recall. I know they're high, but
Yeah, I would say it would probably be in the $30,000 to $50,000 cost.
thank you. Yeah, so in that case, like with that
haven't had to
table
do
you've
one
got
for a
there,
little
the
while.
path that has no consultation required would seem the most prudent path at the moment, and hence I'm on the same page as Noel, and that at the moment I'd be supporting that letter to try and achieve that path, but who knows what NZTA will
Yeah,
do. Right?
and the key determinant in that is the funding assistance rate that we are able
Yes.
to secure from NZTA.
Totally agree, yeah. Thanks.
Ben?
You could we just go back to the one that's got the tick boxes on it about consultation. Yeah. So just that item number 3. So if the NZTA choose to cease funding the service in April, we would have to go out through the annual plan and consult on that. But then a year later, we'd have to go out again to the LTP.
So option 3 is that the service doesn't continue after the 30th of June this year. So as part of your annual plan process, you would be doing an amendment to the LTP, because the LTP assumes that the service continues and that the service continues with 51% funding assistance rate, but says if you drop to 51%, that is a trigger to to engage with the community consult to ensure that they still want to continue the service at that lower funding assistance rate. So that's all been taken into consideration in these options. Effectively, the amendment to the LTP is because it's a significant change to a level of service for a significant activity. We have interregional rail as a specific activity within our groups of activity. So that's been deemed to be significant, which is why you'd need the LTP amendment.
But it's not a year later when we're doing the LTP. It happens at the same time.
You amend it as part of the consultation.
It's only one consultation process.
Absolutely. It's just because it's an amendment, you have an associated audit requirement that attaches itself to that.
Angela?
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for stepping us through this. And to me, it makes logical sense based on who's making decisions where and timing, etc. Yeah, and I appreciate the effort that's gone into almost doing 2 parallel scenarios. But yeah, I think it makes sense to me to ask for that extended rate, and then we'll see what comes back and we'll know further. So yeah, thank you.
Keith?
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Just in terms of the process, basically what you're asking for, Phil, is a guide on direction. I take it from this meeting, and I think there's some components that are missing in the whole process. So the rail was a trial. We've got some things that have come up that show the good points and the deficiencies, and I have to state, hand on heart, I'm a rail person, but I don't think we have the population or the infrastructure fit for purpose. So what I'm suggesting, Phil, is that I think that we should stop the whole Te Huia thing at the moment, but we should carry on the work to make us rail ready in the future. And it may be we have feeder lines feeding into Hamilton locally, our own rail metro, and
Keith, I'm going to stop you there. That's not relevant to this conversation. So
Look,
this is the conversation to understand the rating impacts of a decision that's coming to us on Thursday and how that may progress. We're not discussing future services or anything like that in this conversation. It's not relative to the annual plan conversation we're having now.
I beg to differ in that the sorry?
It's a Thursday conversation.
Okay, I'll accept it as long as it goes on Thursday. Yep, I'll accept that.
Thank you, Gary Raymer.
I suppose I'm trying to struggle to work out, but look, I just don't think there's a place for continuation. When I see the long-term options and what's in front of us, so I don't see any rational argument that we could say we should continue in the short-term funding of the Te Huia. Okay.
It's a Thursday
That's
conversation as well. Thank you. Yep. You guys catch on quick. I'm impressed. Right. What I'd like to raise though is the rolling stock business case and the potential of impacts. Is that further on from this?
Yeah, we'll cover that
Okay. No,
further
that's
on
fine.
in terms of the new investments that are being requested.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Sweet.
Happy to move on. Thank you for that clarity.
Brent.
Morning. I take it that you will have read the report, which has got the more detail than is up on the slide here. But effectively, what I'm coming to you today to ask is your appetite for me to progress conversations with partners about opportunities for the use of the accumulated reserve. Background to that accumulated reserve, you might recall 2 or 3 years ago now, the council decided that this part of our work program would transition from being funded from general rate through to being funded from property owners over 20 hectares. Similar the way that the permit activity compliance monitoring work is being done, and the council decided to transition from a 50-50 arrangement in year 1 to transition over to an 80-20 arrangement over the course of the LTP. So at the same time, government then decided to pause the national freshwater farming regulations and has continued to pause those and has changed and is now telling us that maybe we'll see some light of day of that in the new year. It's obviously got a very busy work program, and those national regulations apply across the region. And you'll have seen Plan Change 1 has been progressing its way through the court system. So what staff have been doing is pausing on work. That includes pausing on replacing staff. And so we have a number of vacancies that we've been holding. And that collectively means that we haven't been spending the money that was budgeted to be spent, and it's sitting aside now in the reserve because that money has come from those landowners over 20 hectares. The opportunity that creates is for how do you want to utilise that reserve? So clearly, one option is that reserve to be used to offset funds costs in future, or to return those funds, or does the council wish to consider another option around developing an incentive scheme? So Chris and I have separately just had some quiet conversations with other partners who might be interested in, let's call it a coalition of the willing. If the regional council were to create an incentive scheme that we would seed with the money from the reserve, approaching people like MPI, approaching Fonterra, approaching Waikato River Authority, approaching rural banks, to see if we can create, if you like, a coalition of the willing to create a fund, and then to work with the rural sector about what would help them as part of supporting them through an incentive scheme for the costs that are coming to the rural sector for implementing both freshwater farm plans under the national regulations and farm environment plans under PC1. So I didn't want to dive into any conversations in any sort of depth with any partners unless we had, I guess, a steer from the council that that's where you would like me to go. Because starting conversations and then later on saying, actually, thanks for the conversation, but that's not somewhere where the council's looking to go, obviously isn't a efficient use of my time or my staff's time. So that's the fundamental issue, to get a bit of a sense, a bit of a steer, as you're saying, Keith, a bit of a steer from governance about which direction you'd like me to go.
Brent, can you just give us an understanding that sort of ballpark figures of what it would cost to have that conversation compared to what it would cost to start to look at potentially putting in some good stuff on the ground? So I just don't want to talk first. It's going to chew up $2 million and get nowhere, is where I'm coming from.
The cost of there's no additional cost of the conversation. The cost of the conversation is just my time, and I create that time. And then the cost of getting ideas from the sector, because we want it to be something that's coming from the sector. And so that would be people like Tracy Nelson and her team engaging with the farming sector, farming and growing sector, about what would support them. In the report, mentioned there's some relatively simple things that one could do. Does the council wish to subsidise the cost of certifying farm plans? It's a relatively simple thing. Would you like to do that? Would the council like to subsidise the consenting process? Would the council, there's a whole range of different things that you could do, which could be relatively simple. But it's about finding out from the sector what would be best for them, if that's a pathway that the council thought would be worth pursuing.
Okay, so can I just clarify? So it's basically a yes/no question, in the fact that yes, we want you to carry on with those thoughts and that working into that space with other potential stakeholders, and just where would we have some oversight into that space further down? Like, when would this come back to us, is I guess what I'm asking.
So for example, if the council is of the view that it would like to be part of a coalition of the willing, I shouldn't use that term, it's a military term I shouldn't use, but if the part of council is interested in that, and then I go out and speak to a whole bunch of partners and nobody is interested, then you may have a different view when it comes further down the track. Okay. So it's a timing issue of me having those conversations to then bring that back to you in the new year. Janine, that would be February, March.
Well, I guess that's what we're trying to ascertain here, Brent, in terms of how much time is it going to take you to do that? Obviously, the annual plan discussion is end of Feb, so whether it can be achieved with it.
Yeah, and then of course from there it's the working with partners about what it would be used for. So it's quite a bit of energy, if I put it that way, to expend in a relatively short period of time, which I wouldn't want to divert my staff's energy into that if the council is of the mind that the reserve goes back to the parties from which the funds came in the first place. So
Okay, thank you. So, to me, it is a very short yes or no thing. So, I'm a yes, but I'll go to no.
It's not as simple as you see, Mr. Chairman. Fundamentally, this is causing me a lot of angst insofar as, that went through on the chair's casting vote in the last triennium. And I will restate my position. I was against it for a number of reasons. However, if we look at the rates control team during the last election process, they campaigned on the return of the 2.5 million for the purpose it was collected. It was surplus, so they wanted to go back. We've got 2 million now sitting in this budget reserve, and we're being asked, the way I read it, to use it for a different purpose. And I think that's entirely inappropriate.
No. So I think
No.
I'll let Brent answer that.
Well, can I
That
finish
statement that you've just made.
Can I finish what I was saying and then?
Is it relative to the statement you've just made? Okay.
So I'm conflicted insofar as I am a farmer, declare that, and can see the benefit of it. But if we're taking it for one purpose, which was intended, we're now being asked to use it for another purpose. I'm just not sure that we should be doing it. It's not transparent.
Okay, so I think you need some clarity around that statement. So Brent, guys, I get you to turn your mics off? I have a speaking order. Thanks. Brent.
so I wouldn't describe it as for a different purpose, councillor. I think the purpose of that area was to support the rural sector to meet its obligations under the Freshwater Farm Plan regulations and Plan Change 1. That's the overarching purpose of that rate. Now, there wasn't a specific work program at the time that said, as part of supporting the sector, we'll develop an incentive scheme. What this opportunity has created is whether or not you wish to use the funds that have been saved by not spending to support the rural sector in a different way through an incentive scheme. Now, so the choice is then, which achieves this, as Janine just noted, which is about achieving the same outcome of supporting the rural sector to meet their obligations. As you say, there are options of using this as seed to grow something. If the council doesn't wish to go down that pathway, that's fine, but I don't see it as for a different purpose, because the purpose has always been to support the rural sector to meet their obligations.
I find it not offensive, but I find it troubling that the council is rating me as a farmer, or someone who owns 20 hectares or more, rating me to now offer that money back to me to do something, which I'm obliged to do anyway. So it's just back to front. It doesn't make sense. We've got a responsibility to do it, and I support that. But to take money off me to give it back to me to incentivise me to do something I'm required to do anyway, just doesn't make sense. So I'll leave it at that.
Yep. Thanks, Robbie.
I'm with Noel here. I think it's a no. And if the opportunities are stum, you're still collecting a rate for it in the next 12 months anyway. So the money's still there to do what you wanted. If we need to, if another decision, if you can round up all the cats and make a decision and they want to do something, I think that's something we can talk about next year, and there'll be rates collected for that. So I think this money here has to go back to the targeted ratepayers that it came from. That's my opinion. It's been collected for a purpose of helping do a national direction on farm plans or freshwater farm plans or whatever we're going, and that has not been decided by the government how that's going to happen yet or what's going to happen. So that has to go back to the blooming people that paid it. Thank you.
So wouldn't you think, though, that once it goes back, okay, taking your scenario, and then when we need to do that work, we're going to recollect it?
You already still are collecting it. So you're not recollecting it. You're actually double dipping because you've already got next year's money coming in.
So if I just clarify, as you've noted, Robbie, we have funding for delivering our work program next year. This is simply an opportunity, and I totally understand. This is why I wanted to come here to make it. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of staff time on something if the councillors are collectively of the view that the money should go back, and then that's all fine. It's just I just wanted to make sure that you saw that there was the opportunity so that you could make that call.
And I don't think we should be employing anyone in any division until we know where we were going in the future as well. So we don't need any more new employees.
I don't think that was what Brent was saying. No. And he was going out for, I'm not arguing with you. That's enough. Thanks, Robbie. Gary Rama.
For me, it's a no. So I agree with Bell's comments. It feels like you're taking money to give it back to us. And also I think about we might have, not double dipping, but working alongside. So if I look at organisations like Fonterra and Silverfern Farms, two companies I supply, you know, they're working in this space anyway to help farmers and that. And so I don't really see a great need to have the regional council come alongside that as well. So I just see it trying to occupy a space that's getting filled. So I'm a definite no.
Keith.
Yes, so in terms of the conversation we're having, Brent, the only definite we have from the government is that farmers will be required a simplified farm plan. That's the only definite we've got. So I think in terms of trying to shadow box what PC1 will be is just purely a waste of time. So I think at the moment mine is a definite no, and it could be quite a while before we know what PC1 will turn out to be.
Gary Maguire.
Pardon me. I think there was a bit of a precedent set just recently, like I think I asked you, Warren, whether with Te Huia, whether the money, if it was saved on that, could be put into funding buses, and you said that it could not be collected for one thing and then used on another, and so it was that couldn't work. So there's a precedent there that sets the same thing. So I'd agree with all the guys here, is that the money was collected for a specific reason, and it, in my opinion, it should be returned and deal with whatever comes from PC1 if it gets to that point with the changes in the RMA.
Okay, I don't disagree with anything anyone has said, but I think the question was, can Brent go out to the rural professional sector and engage with them to find out what their thinking is? He's not asking us how we spend the 2 million or anything like that. So my view is I would quite like to understand what the rural professional sector would like to do. Would they like to take an active financial interest? It could be a really good opportunity to work together to deliver some really good outcomes for PC1. And then once we've heard from them, then decide what we do with the 2 million or whatever the amount is. So I don't want to preempt a conversation around what happens to the 2 million until I've heard from directly, or Brent and the team have heard directly from the sector. They may have ideas around this that we haven't heard from or haven't even considered. So I kind of wanted to take a two-step approach.
Thanks, Liz.
I'm a yes. For Greg, for Brent to carry on with some form of engagement. Yeah.
And that was his question, yeah. Jen.
Everything Liz said, plus some of the reasoning is we went on a field trip last week, and there were a couple of landowners standing in front of us saying, regional council never incentivises us to do something like this. And I'm mindful that the intention with that was, oh, it'd be cool if they did. So just noting that. Secondly, the regulatory functions, the compliance, monitoring and enforcement, the RM reforms are looking at taking out of regional councils as such. I think that when that happens, councils can have a really good hard think about what they're there for the community in regards to being a bit more of a enabler of just making life a bit easier rather than being the one that's running at you or driving up your driveway with a stick, that type of thing. So that dynamic's going to change. So with Liz on that I'm interested to know what people think out there. And we obviously have a pot of money that technically to the same outcome could be utilised should the options require that, but I have sympathy for the argument about collecting it and giving it back. So even whatever comes out of what Brent finds, maybe that's just the seed for what happens at some point going forward. So in the meantime, that's that. I do find it interesting that argument about collecting and giving it back. It is the same that we'll get to with the surplus conversation soon.
Thanks. Mike online.
Yeah, sorry guys, I'm going to agree with the ladies. That field trip was a great eye opener for me. Just what these farmers are doing. So yeah, I agree with Liz that at least this is a process that we can go through and then decide on the 2 million and how we spend it.
Thanks, Mike. Gary, did you want to?
Yeah, Warren, I'd like to respond to those comments too, because to some extent, I don't see it as the regional council incentivising farmers. It's not an incentive. In rural professionals, their eyes are just light up with the dollar signs. I look at a lot of these consultation fees that come through in the documents that we read, obviously, and I always say, how do you get to, you ask for a consultant to do something on maybe 2 years, it's $500,000 or $550,000, and you say, how on earth did you arrive at that number? And so when I look at the rural professionals coming through, I just think they'll say, their eyes are light up and they want to make money. They're out there, they're private consultants and they want to make money. So anything like this is just them. So
Can I
to
clarify?
go there is not the right place. You're not talking to the farmers themselves.
Can I clarify the
yeah.
rural professionals? So I'm talking about Fonterra. I'm talking about all of the rural professional, not consultants, that our key stakeholders and our partners.
Thanks. Thanks, Liz. Yeah.
If I could just make a comment on the back of that very comment. So I know when I initially had a discussion with Brent about this some 6 months ago, I said, well, what if we could use some money that we had to lever money out of other agencies to assist the rural community in this region, who are going to have to deal with something new, be it from national legislation or be it through our own rules that come into effect. And the idea was, what if the WRA was prepared to match the amount of funding we put in? What if Beef and Lamb were prepared to put some money in, and the dairy sector some money in to support their farmers? And I know when I say the dairy sector, the comments are, well, they already are. That's true. But what if there's a gap between what they're currently doing and what the new requirements might be under PC1? That's what this was about. Which is consistent with that. It wasn't about how to go and incentivize a farm consultant and how to engage with a farmer in doing it. So just on the back of that comment, it was kind of more at an industry scale. And I think that's, Brent, I'm just checking, that's just still your thinking when you put this up here, that concept?
Absolutely, Chris, because sometimes these things need a seed and somebody to take the lead and start. And we don't know where that's going to go. But if there are, for example, if there are rural banks out there that are looking for somewhere to put some money to support the rural sector, and we say, we've got something that we're looking to start, would you join? WRA, if they're looking for something to join, if Fonterra are looking to something to join, then that's what I'm looking for a bit of a steer about, because that takes a bit of work for me and my staff to go out there and look to try to create this. But I totally respect that the perspective that you presented, Robbie, that this money has already been taken from rural landowners and to direct me, that's not where we want you to go, Brent. Don't waste your time doing that, because I just want to get that really clear steer, because it's a bit of effort if I go down that pathway.
Yeah, Ben.
So, Brent, I just wanted to say, firstly, I thought as a layperson, this sounded like a great idea. It's interesting to hear what the people who are actually the people who do this work are saying, and it's pretty much clear no. The question I had for you is, between now and February, could you go out to the Rural Bank and the Fonterras and ask them? And do you need to know that you've got potentially $2 million before you have that ask, or could you ask without knowing you had that?
So what I would intend doing is sounding out people. Would you be interested if this council was interested, but I want to be able to going out there saying that this council hasn't decided, but this council is interested. Because then it gives us an opportunity for conversation, because then I'm able to come back to you and say, Waikato River Authority is interested in joining. This rural bank is interested in joining. I know MPI has consistently got a sum of money that they're looking to figure out how to best spend that. Often people are looking for ideas to come in that they say, yes, we can latch onto that. And then you start to create something. So, but like I said, I don't want to go and organise a whole bunch of meetings with different folk to then find out that that's not something that this council currently is thinking that it's a work program that it wants to work on right now.
So I guess, Warren, for me, it's coming back to those who are farmers who are saying no about whether they want Brent to come back in late February saying, I've spoken to these people with the potential of a $2 million input from us. Do you want to consider it because 5 of them have joined up? And if none of them have joined up, then would we be willing to say yes to coming back with a proposal in late February?
I think that was the original idea that Brent laid before
Well,
us.
I got the impression reading this, it was like, you've agreed today that the 2 million is going to be used, and I'm going out there knowing I've got to.
Well, yeah, and I understand, and I think some others around the room have got that impression as well. So I'll come to you, Tipper, online. You there, Tipper?
Yes, sorry, I was future proofing options being presented, but realistically, Brent, we don't have the ambit to form partnerships for the long term. So where would we migrate that to is my question, just as the options are being written up. Thank you.
Tipper, could you reframe that question for me? I wasn't quite sure what you were seeking from me.
Not a question, comments.
Just clarify, it's not a long-term fund. You're saying, how do we spend this in the next year and a half while we're still here? Yeah.
No, I'm saying I want it to future-proof, create something meaningful and different, but I mean, selling partnership when we're not the future partner, it needs more robust conversation, I believe. Thank you. It's not a question to you, Brent. It's a comment.
Thank you, Tipper. But to respond to your question, Ben, that it wasn't something that I had firmed a view around the time frame. So, for example, if the national regulations pop out at the beginning of next year and they require farm plans over a 4 or 5 year period, how would one do that with partners over that period? I hadn't got any further down the pathway to. I don't want to go into some rural banks and start conversations if the council doesn't have an interest in having the conversation, not the outcome, but having the conversation, because I respect that the previous decisions on the council have been around where money has been taken, put it back. If you want to put an incentive scheme in place, Brent, come back and ask the community for money for an incentive scheme. And that would be something that would then need to approach the council whether or not it wishes to do that through the LTP. Right now, there's a reserve, it creates an opportunity. Do you want me to have the conversation?
Thanks, Brent. We've heard a number of, there's a couple of people that want to speak back to it, but we have heard some of your opinions and I don't want to labour this. No.
Thank you. Having about to demonstrate that I can listen and change my mind.
I always thought of you as a councillor with an open mind.
Side coming out on me, shame. No, in seriousness, I'm prepared to let the conversation be had or agree to it, but I have all my serious concerns still there. The problem also is the detail. You talk about a 4 to 5 year program. So if we were lucky enough and the council decided to go down this track with partners, how will you manage? And this is what I want to hear if we agree to this coming back. How will you set it up so that those who jump in because the money's there, that we ensure that in 5 years' time that the money's still there for somebody who's at the tail end, okay? Or is it first in, first served, best rest, all that stuff?
So that's the sort of thing that I anticipate coming back, councillors, because there are, for those that the government regulations and PC1 require to go first in the first year or two, they have a different burden on them than those that come in year 4 and 5, because there's a lot of learning that's going to happen for all concerned in year 1 or 2. And so there's different burdens at different times over that time frame. And so there will be different options for how the rural community would like to be supported, which is why I'm very conscious about saying this wouldn't be about council telling the rural community how you're going to be supported, but asking them how they would like to be supported with their money, if we can lever their money to bring in other money. That's the concept which I'm looking to get sensible with. Not you'd like me to, because that's going to be a bunch of work for some folk in a very short period of time to have those conversations. That's the concept.
So I go back to my earlier comments is, farmers will be annoyed that you've taken money in suggesting how the council spend their money when they could have that sovereign choice themselves.
Yep. Robbie?
I'm still a no and I'm open-minded, but my issue is, what is the catchment? It's about most probably 55% Waikato River and 45% the rest so you're asking the rest of us 45 to subsidise maybe a PC1 talk. And that's why this money needs to go back to the ratepayer, because it's not even getting distributed in a fair way. So I think this is a long plan discussion, not what this money here should be used for. So I'm leaving it there.
Angela?
Yeah, I think with most of these discussions today with the annual plan, it's not just a one and done. Often it is that two-step process that Liz referenced before. Yeah, I am open to having that conversation and then seeing what comes back. So we've got a little bit more information. But yeah, I'll leave my comments there.
Thank you. Keith?
Yeah, my concerns, Brent, are what is a rural professional? So at the moment, if you ask any farmer, would they trust Fonterra, OCD, Dairy NZ, Beef and Lamb to speak on their behalf? They would say no. And even to the point that Dairy NZ has a high risk of losing its levy funding because farmers have that much distrust. So the other part of it is, in terms of defining who a rural professional is, isn't it a little bit insulting to not to ask the farmers themselves? And because a lot of them run big businesses, they have also been spending a lot of money, and they will spend a lot of money in terms of the PC1 process. Now, in terms of that, also, please don't forget the millions of dollars that our representative organisations, and that they are Fonterra, Dairy NZ, and all those that have spent on PC1 at the moment. So you're really asking them to fund again something that doesn't need to be done, because the government has said quite explicitly the only thing that's certain is a farm environment plan, a simplified farm environment plan. So I say, if you want to do anything with that money, sit on it, but certainly don't spend it for the sake of spending.
A comment, and I'll ask for some advice from yourself, Mr. Chair. I don't think you were asking us that we're going to ask all the farmers if they want to contribute to this incentive scheme. No. That's not what the request was. So I think, I'm trying to read the tenor of the room. I'm beginning to wonder if we're wasting our time, if there's going to be, at least about half the council actually doesn't think this is a good idea. Because quite seriously, we've got a lot on our plate in the next few months, and we thought it might be a good idea to try and farmers going forward. Those who are going to have to meet obligations that they don't currently meet, know how to meet, but I think the reading in the room, doing several work and it wouldn't be
There's a question. Whether in fact it's suspended. So I'd like that to be on the.
I'm going to wind up really quickly, Liz. Yeah.
So just for clarity, what I've heard today is that this room is going to sort of leave this on the table, that we do not want to ask any of our rural partners if they want to put any money into implementation or into a fund. Okay, so I'm going to come back in a few, potentially in a few months' time, remind you that you did not want that, because that was the only question today, is should Brent go out to this sector and see if they wanted to partner with us and put money into potentially into some, into a pot.
Yep.
Also remember, local government needs to change. We cannot keep funding all of these things ourselves, and going out into the private sector is seen as an enormous opportunity for all councils around the country right now. And what I'm hearing today is that this council does not want to do that.
Not
And I
at this
think that's
stage, Liz.
I think that's very short-sighted, but I'm happy to go with the majority of the room.
Before we go, do you have a parting comment? Please make it something different if you haven't already heard it.
No, I think people are getting confused between the intention of, is this something that the council wants to explore, whether it's for annual plan or long-term plan, and what this money is used for. So if it's limited to, is council interested in, I think that's where we've got to stick with. Whether this money gets slowly phased back to people, and we still understand the answer to that question, fine. So.
Yep, Ben.
So just very briefly, how difficult would it be to give this money back? Again, you're going to have to we're talking about the prior year surplus.
Yeah,
mechanism.
can we pick it up in the next topic, which
Yep.
is prior year surplus,
And so-
because the same thing applies, but this is with a small group of ratepayers who are currently paying it. I think the other complexity that we have is we're still working through a transitional funding policy of switching the mix from the 50-50 general targeted that Brent raised to through this annual plan, looking at getting finally to the 80-20 funding.
So no, I just want to clarify.
What?
Want to have a clarify whether we're planning to leave the $2 million sitting there. If we're not using it, it carries on and sits in a
We
pool.
can deal with that further down the track.
That's
Ben,
our
I need
annual plan, yeah.
to understand an answer to Brent's question. Is it something that you're prepared to look at potentially changing the no to a maybe? Yeah, we'll adjourn for 5 minutes.